Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you from behind the wall, the post-race show that comes on after the show, where unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, Denny Hamlin has punched his ticket into the round of 12 with a convincing victory here at the end of the day, battling a lot of his Joe Gibbs Racing teammates, other contenders there at the front of the field in the quickly developing playoff picture. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight. We'll be talking about the action in the Cup Series race, as well as yesterday's Xfinity Series race. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show here tonight. I actually do have a driver interview that I scheduled for about 4:30 Pacific time here. So this will be kind of a quick look here. Not too much to go over here, I think, between the two races here, so hopefully that should work out, so we'll jump right into it. Denny Hamlin with a tremendous victory here, not afraid to talk some smack to the crowd there afterwards, leading 75 of the 240 laps today in Gateway. Second place, Chase Briscoe, looked like he was going to be on his way to a back-to-back win here, looked very strong in this race, despite an issue on pit road with the left rear wheel. Came back out there and still got a runner-up finish for him. Chase Elliott, very solid. Seemed like the broadcast was talking about him an awful lot in this race there, and he still got a third-place finish out of that. Ryan Blaney coming back from a spin off the nose of Kyle Larson through turns 3 and 4. And after coming so close to winning this race last year, before some misfortune handed it to his teammate Austin Cindric, in this one here, that was the misfortune that kind of kept him out of victory lane. Ends up at a distant 4th place finish here too. Joey Logano, another Penske car in the 5th place spot. The Hunt Brothers pizza scheme here. And that sponsor is still looking for its first Cup Series win, but Logano still giving himself some momentum here into the next round. John Hunter Nemechek continues to impress after that great weekend for the Legacy Motor Club at the Darlington Raceway. Nemechek was right in and around the top 10 for most of the second half of this race and found his way up there into the 6th place finish. Christopher Bell in 7th was my fantasy pick this week. I thought for sure that he too would recover from the disappointment of last year's race as well. Had a neat scheme too. I like the whole thing with the 2x4s on the car there. I think they've run that scheme before, but this version of it looked really nice. Unfortunately, good paint schemes don't always win, and this time around finishes in the 7th spot. Still a fine run for him. Bubba Wallace looked great out there, led 73 laps, almost as many laps as Denny Hamlin did in this race here. Getting some strategy up there, was looking very aggressive, very fast, built up a big lead of over 2 seconds at one point, ends up with an 8th place finish there. Chris Buescher just tweeted a moment ago there about getting, I believe, his 16th top 10 finish of the year, finishing in the 9th spot there, so a fine job for him. And Ty Gibbs, still in search of that elusive first Cup Series victory, comes home in the 10th spot. That seemed to be more or less where he ran most of this day. Your last place finisher in this race was once again Josh Berry. This was, again, a disastrous start to his playoffs here. I think for most people, seemed to predict that the Wood brothers weren't going to make a very deep run, and seemed to be most people's pick in the bottom 4. But regardless, I think their qualifying run that they had last week, when they were 3rd fastest, this week they were 12th fastest. But unfortunately, that seemed to be where the positives of this ended here. Barry looking to come back from the last place run at Darlington. In this case here, had a bit of a tight battle between Chase Elliott and Joey Logano. I still think from the replay, it looked like he was already kind of out of control going into the corner. And Chase Elliott did move up the track, but I don't know if there was that much contact. Again, I could be completely wrong about that, but at least more of those replays they showed, it just looked like that car was a bit unstable. There was a part in the earlier part of the race where he and Bubba Wallace just kind of bounced off each other on the back straightaway there. So maybe that car was already kind of having some issues. But Barry ends up with the last place finish, his 2nd in a row at Gateway, and the first time ever in the history of the Wood Brothers team that they have finished last in 2 consecutive Cup races. Twice in the team's history. Once in 1980 with Neil Bonnet, and another time in 2015 with Ryan Blaney. They finished last in 2 of 3 straight races, but never 2 races in a row until today, again, pending the results of post-race inspection. So a rough deal for the Wood brothers there. This time around, they weren't able to make the repairs and get them back out there 100 or so laps down that we saw at Darlington when they got the 1-point bonus for getting the fastest lap of the race. Here, they were called out of the race pretty quick. He fell out after 35 laps and was declared out by lap 41. So a short issue there for him. Uh-oh, is the audio cutting out? I had so many problems getting this set up here today. My headphone still doesn't feel right, so I apologize if the audio is not sounding good on your end. Whoop, hang on, don't want to turn that off either. This thing has been a little bit spotty, so I do apologize if it's cutting out. Is it still doing it here? I don't know if we're having any of their issues with the audio, Joshua, but thank you for the heads up there. Hopefully that's not too much of a problem. Unfortunately, I'm kind of limited on my solutions here at the moment, but we will try to work through this as best as audio's been fine. Okay, yeah, we'll just keep playing around with it there. If it gets worse, definitely let me know in the chat, and I'll see what we can do here in the meantime. I think my headphones, I think this is just wearing out. The right channel here, I'm just not hearing it. Anyway, moving on. Josh Berry again with the last place finish. First time the 21 is finished last at a cup race at Gateway, although it's a very small sample size with it being very new to the circuit here as well. Daniel Suarez involved in an incident with Chase Briscoe, bounced off of him. Kind of an unusual incident. It seemed like he was going to kind of turn the corner there for Briscoe there, smoking one of the tires there going into the first corner and colliding with Suarez, knocking him into the outside wall. Suarez ends up falling out of the race. And between them, I mean, unless Ty Dillon actually had a mechanical issue that took them out, obviously he had a couple of, he had the brake failure on the right front there towards the end of the race that perhaps did. He ended up 32 laps down at the finish, but very low attrition otherwise. Excuse me. Oh, you got late season allergy season picking back up here. Anyway, going through the rest of the order here. Ty Dillon in the 34th spot. Zane Smith, I don't know what happened with him and Todd Gilliland there. Smith in particular had a great weekend going into this. Qualified in the 10th spot. He seemed like he was right around the leaders there. But the field was so closely bunched together. We had pretty much everybody on the lead lap until maybe about the last 40 or 50 laps of this race. And Zane Smith seemed like he was right up there in the mix, but he dropped all the way to the last car running, one lap down in the 33rd spot at the checkered flag. So an unfortunate deal for him. This was the race you may recall that Zane actually made his cup debut when Chris Buescher was switched out of the 17 car for having COVID-like symptoms. But then Zane had a great run in the 17 car there. Buescher came back and had that great run at Sears Point the next week when he was challenging Suarez for the lead. But this time around, yeah, just didn't quite shake out that way. And he joins Todd Gilliland in the bottom five here at the same time. So kind of a rough afternoon for everyone else. Hard to have some breakout runs for a number of drivers. Shane Van Gisbergen, I thought, was very impressive in this. He showed a lot of spirit out there, trying to get some good runs, made some crazy moves into turn one, and was just trying to get going. It just looked so difficult to pass out there, especially after you got through that first corner there on the restart. It seemed like it was so hard for anybody to make any traction through the field there. The passes, I mean, it seemed like people could get alongside each other really well, but like we see so often at, some of these smaller tracks there on the circuit, it just kind of worked out that different deal there too. So again, kind of a different situation there for a lot of these teams. But I thought Van Gisbergen, under the circumstances, was really fun to watch in this one. He ended up back in 25th at the checkered flag, but regardless, I think that he put on a good rebound. I mean, the results aren't going to show, compared to all the issues he had at Darlington. I mean, my goodness, he was on pit road constantly, kept bouncing off the wall. Things just didn't shake out for him there at the beginning. But in this one, again, he, as they mentioned, as Lee Diffie, I believe, mentioned in the broadcast, just trying to do the very best he can and get the best performance he can out of that 88 car. Just wasn't meant to be here this time around. Kyle Busch also showed a lot of persistence in this, despite the spin at the very beginning of the race that tweaked the front valence and the splitter on the front left front corner of his car. It seemed like that was going to be a long day for him, but he found his way back into the top 10 there in the late stages, ends up in the 22nd spot at the checkered flag, but was really kind of looking, again, trying to get the best run he could at a track where he'd scored his most recent Cup Series victory a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, not a win for him here as well. Same for Austin Cindric, the defending winner, ends up back in the 19th position there. Looked very good at the start of the weekend there, but just not quite up to the same speed from before. Brad Keselowski, we saw up front for a couple of times there. Led 13 laps in this race. Seemed to get on the front row on a couple of restarts there and trying to kind of battle at one point there, just didn't quite have the tires to stay up front and ends up back in the 17th spot. Seems like a pretty common story for a lot of these drivers, trying to find their way up there and then just settling back there in the last stretch run and not quite able to mount much of a comeback there. But regardless, still finishing the race under power in a race where, again, you had very low attrition and it was not predictable at all who was going to be finishing where. Yeah, as I mentioned in the chat here, you guys mentioning in the chat, and I also mentioned on the graphic here, brake failure been a big issue this weekend. Again, I don't know what it is about this track that suddenly made it the new Pocono or whatever. It's kind of that combination of being like combining like Martinsville and New Hampshire and just the most demanding aspects of both those tracks. But we saw it back with Carson Hocevar and that brake failure that spoiled his debut a couple of years ago. We saw it again today with Ty Dillon in the Cup Series race, and we certainly saw it in the Xfinity Series race yesterday. We'll be talking a bit about that a little bit later in the show here as well. But yeah, just a tough weekend in general. I imagine if this race were any longer, some of those green flag runs would have probably been cut a bit shorter. It's kind of surprising that the race went green for as long as it did. And then, of course, having a caution right in the middle of one of the last pit sequences, I think kind of made things a little more unpredictable there at the end, perhaps helped Denny Hamlin in the stretch run there. And yeah, you got people on different tire strategies. I would have liked to see what the last lap for people, changing tires was at the end of this race. If they had a graphic for that, I felt like that would have been helpful because I was really losing track of that in the second half of this race here. But regardless, I think that Hamlin put together a fine showing here as well. But again, not the greatest race, certainly not the worst either. I mean, it seemed like it was very much up in the air as to who was actually going to be able to pull this off. Lastbro picked Chase Briscoe to win this, and I was starting to kind of believe that, yeah, he may as well just pave his way through the rest of these playoffs here and just storm his way to as many of these wins as possible. And although he looked very good and did lead 15 laps, kind of seemed to pick up right where he left off at the start of this race. Wasn't meant to be there, but a second place finish. Margin of victory, 1.62 seconds between the top two finishers of this race there. So a fine deal for both of them. Other drivers further back in the pack, Michael McDowell we saw have a good run off pit road. I believe did a 2-tire stop towards the end. Ends up with the 14th place finish. Ryan Preece got squeezed into the outside wall off turn 4. Still got a 13th place showing. Austin Dillon even tried to get something going where he tried to get to the front of the pack there. Just wasn't able to kind of hang on to that. And again, falls back into the 18th spot there at the finish of that. Alex Bowman, my goodness, talk about drivers just picking up where they left off. Another disastrous pit stop at the very beginning of the race there with a very, very long delay there. Car rolling off, looked like the left rear wheel came off. They started to pull out and just a disaster. But did a great job trying to get back into it, though. I mean, that was featured pretty good on the broadcast getting up there. Didn't shake out for him either, and he ends up finishing in 26th there. Very similar to New Hampshire, which we're going to see here in the coming weeks in the playoffs here as well. Again, no margin for error, but we did see some people attempt to come back, but it seemed like whatever damage was done not only to their cars, but to their strategy, and they couldn't find their way back up there too. I think, decent run there. Enjoyed Bill Murray at the pre-race ceremonies there. And I guess that was a bit of good luck there for Denny Hamlin as well, with the interview on pit road. Looked like beautiful weather out there. A little bit of controversy before the start with the pyrotechnics, which again, USA did more than an adequate job of showing, backing up and doing that great blimp shot there of it happening live and then showing several replays afterwards, but then also covering possible consequences of that, whether it was there was reports at the beginning of the race about Kyle Larson picking up some debris on the windshield and worried about it damaging the tear-offs on the windshield. Ultimately didn't come down pit road for that. And then apparently, at least this was the rumor, that perhaps that burnt the looked like zip ties that were holding those brake markers there into turn 3, and he had one of those come loose and bring out a caution there too. So kind of a quirky element of that. I thought the broadcast did a great job of covering like real minutia like that. And I thought that was really good, especially when you have a race like this where you have long green flag runs and low attrition. You got to fill that time with something, and don't just puff up and tell me how great this racing is. Just tell me something that maybe you're seeing that I'm not seeing. And that's all it takes. I think that's really enjoyable. So, again, maybe not the craziest finish out there, but they don't all have to be. That's what makes the other ones special. We talk about this a lot on there too. So, again, I think a solid race, great performance for Hamlin, and he's certainly going to be one to watch. Is he going to be, one to watch for the championship? Is it going to get to the distance here? Who knows? It still seems too early to tell, but this is definitely a very positive sign as he also tries to make the push for his 60th win. Wherever, if he gets another win here this year or any other year, that'll be the next mark there, and that's some very rarefied air in his career. It's good to see that. I think that's smart, though, that he's turned his attention towards that. I think with this playoff system, it's such chaos. The points are going to take care of themselves, however the deal is. Just try to win races. Try to get stage points where you can. The rest will come, or they won't. And I think he's more than dealt with that in his mind for as long as he's been out there, these many years. So, good to see. I appreciate him embracing kind of the boos from the crowd there too, and having fun with it. Certainly hope his father's feeling better. He mentioned that in his interview there too. Again, solid race. Moving on from there. Xfinity Series race from yesterday. Again, kind of a shorter show today, so I'll kind of bust through this segment of it a little bit quicker here this time. Connor Zilic, my goodness, I think Eric Estep mentioned that this was a generational run, and I'd have to agree. This is tremendous what he's accomplished this year in that 88 car. It was like, is he going to win? And then he starts rattling off these other wins here after, you win in your debut at Watkins Glen. You come back, you get a full-time ride with the team and JR Motorsports, and then you just stormed all these victories here this year, coming back from multiple injuries. I mean, my goodness, and getting this very convincing one, leading 121 of 160 laps yesterday. Tremendous job out there. I thought that was really put an exclamation point on his regular season there, and heading into the playoffs that start for them in Bristol next week, and we'll see how that all plays out. William Sawalich and Christian Eckes, I mean, two drivers that absolutely struggled terribly at the start of this year. I thought did a fine job out there. Both of them really clawing their way up there. Sawalich we saw in the top 5, I think the entire night, looked really good. I'm so impressed. I think he is easily the most improved driver this year in the Xfinity Series. Sawalich is for his turnaround since Sears Point. Saw it personally there with that win in the West Series race, and then getting that third place finish there in the Xfinity Series event on a very demanding track under very difficult circumstances. And it just flipped a switch, and he's just been a contender almost every week. Somebody else was mentioning this on social media that, look, if he was in the points, he'd probably really give him a good run this year. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case, kind of like we saw with Leighton Riggs last year in the trucks, but a fine effort. Absolutely emptied the tank out there, and, he'll be back for sure. So that's really good to see. And Eckes as well, just found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time too many times this year. I think there's a lot of unpredictability with the colleague effort, with what they're taking on with this Dodge effort. I don't know what that's going to look like with the Chevys. I think I'm a little troubled that the Hendrick Motorsports Chevy deal went over to the Haas factory team. That makes me wonder where they took it from. I don't know how much of that was a part of the colleague effort or anything, but it's at the very least, it's an allocation of resources that's not going to colleague. So I think that's going to be kind of a bit of an issue, especially given the fact that team, the colleagues, has been kind of all over the place this year. In fact, I mean, the move over there and losing Ford at the Haas factory team, I'm not too crazy about that. I really thought that they were doing a great job with that manufacturer. I've been talking about Sam Mayer just about every week on this show about how impressive he's continued to be. Picked right back up where he left off at JR Motorsports, which is, certainly this year, I would say, is probably the best team out there in the Xfinity Series at this point. He got in that Haas factory car, and he was right there in the top 5 again. Could have won any of those races that he was competing in. It's amazing it took as long as he did to actually break through and get a victory, but got that victory nonetheless. But hopefully they're going to have a good run here the rest of this year. When we go to cover the race at Phoenix, that'll definitely be something that we'll be watching there to see how Sheldon Creed and Sam Mayer close out this season there with Ford before their manufacturer switch for next year. But again, I think that they've done a fine job this year as well So we'll see how that goes. Unfortunately, Mayer ended up collected in one of the accidents there in this race, ends up towards the bottom 5. I think it was his first or second bottom 5 of this year. Very rare, kind of showing again his consistency from this season. But your last place finisher in the Xfinity race was Jordan Anderson. A rare Xfinity start for him as a driver. Of course, he's the team owner. The Bommarito company, that's the presenting sponsor of the team, is also based in St. Louis, which I'm sure was a reason that he was out in this race as well. In fact, his first race with that sponsor was at Gateway back in 2017, which doesn't feel that long ago, but now almost a decade ago. Unfortunately, Anderson with a flat right front tire put him in the outside wall, had some pretty heavy damage. His teammate, Jeb Burton, had also a very serious hit to the turn 2 wall. Glad he was okay after that, with some pretty heavy damage to his car, but unfortunately ended his playoff run. 27 car misses the playoffs. And indeed, that run at Talladega, and they mentioned it there, and we saw that live. You saw the video on this feed here back in April, and how disappointed and disgusted that team was that they were not declared the winner of that race, even though 2 camera angles seemed to show that they were ahead of Austin Hill. That third camera angle was what NASCAR seemed to use, and Austin Hill was declared the winner, and Burton was very upset after that, and unfortunately hasn't really had another opportunity to win in that stretch there, and finds it on the other side. Now, again, we get down to the stretch run of this season. I'm sure he's still got chances to pull off victories and maybe build something again for next year. It's just another crappy part of this playoff system here that we even need to be talking about it in those terms here as well, because that's been a very, very much improved program out there as well. Kind of a wild race last night, though, I'd say. Certainly with the big pile-up that happened in turn 1 with a bit of a stack-up. We had a lot of very ragged restarts and wrecks there in the first half of the track, and certainly that big pile up there that was collecting drivers like Justin Allgaier and Sam Mayer and so forth. Several of the leaders jumbled up the order. But on the other side of that pile up, kudos to Parker Retzlaff. I got to give a shout out to him. I mentioned this in the article that was posted yesterday. An absolutely tremendous run out there. His first top 10 run that he's had since he was second at Rockingham in April. And in that stretch, he's had, I believe it was 7 DNFs. He has had 2 last place finishes. He almost got last 2 other times, if not for 2 other drivers being disqualified in those races. Retzlaff has had an absolutely miserable summer this year, which is terrible because he's an absolutely tremendous talent. If you think back to just not that long ago in his debut with RSS Racing and almost getting a top 5 right out the box, he's an incredible talent out there and just has had just awful, awful luck. But in this one here, he ends up being the front runner for a triple top 20 finish for the Alpha Prime Racing team. Tommy Joe Martin's very excited in the infield afterwards, smoking a cigar there. His teammates there, Brennan Poole in the 14th position, and LeVar Scott in only his second series start gets a 19th place finish. Top 20 run there for him. Tremendous effort after he had to fight very hard to get into the field at Dover in qualifying, and was able to make his debut back out there. So a fine effort for him there too. Colleague effort, I mentioned them earlier and kind of the questions about next year. They put an exclamation point on things here in that race as well, with 3 cars in the top 10. Daniel Dye very nearly got collected in that big pile up in turn 1. Did a fine job out there, finishing in the 10th spot. Daniel Hemrick there in the 7th spot there in the number 11 there, doing a great job, got up there as well. And, of course, mentioning Christian Eckes in his 3rd place finish out there in that. And this, and of course, the Xfinity Series returning to Gateway. I don't know why they left for those 14 years. This track seems perfectly designed for them. I had to pull up one of the first Last Car articles I ever wrote for the Xfinity Series back in 2010, which had a much more brief analysis of what happened with Kevin Hamlin driving the number 36, the start and park entry for TriStar Motorsports a couple generations of car ago back then. That was back when they were just phasing in their Car of Tomorrow back then. So kind of an interesting look back in the sport's recent history there. But good to see the Xfinity Series back out there. I liked the promotional stuff that the CW is doing, showing a lot of old footage and old action and showing which drivers were good there and everything. I think that was a fine job. So yeah, we'll see what comes of that too. Looking at the back of the field there, Jordan Anderson, again, your last place finisher. Surprise engine failure for Carson Quapple. Drops him back to the 37 spot. Jeb Burton and Sam Mayer mentioning their wrecks there as well. And Cole Raz running out the bottom 5 there after having a brake issue at the beginning. Cost him several laps, but got back out there and climbed a few spots. I want to thank Joe Laricente over at the doorstopnation.com website there for getting some quotes there on pit road there. He was able to share some audio he had with Cole Raz before going out there in the Xfinity race. And we may have some more content for him in tonight's article here as well. So stay tuned for that. So big thanks to him. DoorstopNation.com has actually been in following the sport for many years. Back in 2010, I believe it was, they had their logo on one of Front Row Motorsports cars at Dover. Maybe it was even further back. Might have even been 07. It was a Car Tomorrow car, but goes way back there. Also has a great passion for the small teams. If you haven't checked out his site or his newsletters, definitely one to check out there as well. Again, doorstopnation.com. Looking through the rest of the results here again, Austin Hill just outside the top 10. Corey Day with the first top 10 in the Xfinity Series after we saw him do so well in the trucks this year. Really showing, I mean, there's been a lot of excitement around this kid, especially out here. I know he got mentioned a lot at Sears Point, and it's good to see him really kind of getting these great efforts out there. Matt DiBenedetto just outside the top 10, the 11th position. Tony Sauce, Anthony Alfredo in 13th. Dean Thompson in a backup car gets a 16th place finish, this being his primary car for Bristol this week, which the Sam Hunt Racing team, I'm sure, is turning around to get a solid run with. Decent run out there under the circumstances, which was very challenging with the schedule that the Xfinity Series had this weekend here as well. But yeah, fine deal for them. Poor Ryan Sieg ends up with some bad luck again, gets swept up by Allgaier during the big pileup, and drops back to the 27th position, but still under power at the finish. Allgaier, again, mentioning him, the 28 laps led before he was involved. It just seems like it's a flip of a coin whether Allgaier is going to pull off a dominant victory or just have some just terrible luck happen at the second half of one of these races. And in this case here, it was certainly the latter. Congratulations to Joey Gase for getting his 300th career Xfinity Series start yesterday. He went out there and got looking where the results are, 31st place finish for his teammate Glenn Reen. Gase finishing ahead of him in the 26th spot, still on the lead lap. So a fine effort for Gase out there in a year that's also seen him qualify very well at Talladega and continue to operate that two-car operation out there. So good to see for that driver there as well. Pretty engaging. I mean, Xfinity race was easily better than Cup this weekend. That's becoming less surprising as we're seeing here in coming weeks here. But again, I think that they've put on a good show out there. Zilich is going to be very tough. Is it going to be a Zilich versus Allgaier deal for the championship? I mean, who's going to be the other two members of the Final Four at that point? I don't know. How far is Austin Hill going to make it? Other competitors that are up there. Harrison Burton squeaking in there, at the last second. We'll see what they can do. To be honest, I think Moffitt was very strong in that 25 car, and really could have potentially done something in the postseason there. But again, good for that organization making this turnaround after what was a pretty lackluster 2024, where they had several driver changes after Haley Deegan had a rough start to that season. Let's see, looking further back through here. Let's see, Nick Lights in the 29th spot there. Sammy Smith had some kind of mechanical issues there at the end. Ends up back in the 33rd spot. It's kind of a disappointing run there for him as well. That's mostly what I have on that one. Okay, Colliger ECR, not Hendrick. Okay, Andy, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so the Hendrick deal with Haas, then that shouldn't be a factor on Collig. But if we're talking about Chevrolet in general, maybe that would be something. Although, again, if that's not a problem there, then that's not going to be an issue. I'm still concerned about Collig taking on this Ram deal there. I mean, ECR, at the same point there, I can't imagine they're going to be happy about them supporting a Dodge effort, a rival manufacturer. I know they're talking about firewalls and everything, but, who knows what the deal is there too. So we'll see what's going on here at the same time. We'll find out in post-race inspection if it's going to be Josh Berry's second consecutive last place finish. potentially the chance of a third. The Wood brothers finished last at Bristol before. Kyle Petty did, I believe, in 86. But we'll see what the case is there. Took me a little while during this race to actually compile that statistic there on that, because the Wood brothers have run so many different numbers over the years, run the 16 and the 47 and the 121 back when you had Dan Gurney out there. And they ran fields as big as, 57 cars, and as small as about 16 cars. But yeah, in that sports history, at least as far as I've seen, from what on this, never had 2 consecutive last place finishes, which is quite remarkable from that organization. So, yeah, we'll see what that different deal is. Alrighty. Well, we're talking about, we could look at the lawsuit, everything. We got, kind of a brief section on this here. I left it kind of up in the air on last week's show because I was still kind of getting, more of the materials together there. But again, I think with this one here, I agree with the judge's assessment after that hearing recently that, both teams, if they, both sides of this, if they feel like they got a slam dunk case, they really don't. And, that tends to be kind of the car salesman aspect of, when you're trying to be forced into mediation here all the time. But at the same time, I can see a jury looking at both sides of this here and being, having it not quite be clear, where this is going. I think Deb Williams came out and had a very interesting quote talking about putting forward a suit on principle rather than on fact. And, how risky that is when you have somebody that says, oh, it's the principle of the thing. That's what we're doing this. That's really tricky to do when you don't have something firmly to point at. It's like, doesn't this look like a monopoly? Doesn't this look like this, there? It's tricky. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. Because again, it's anyone's guess, but, that's where things can get unpredictable. So, again, I'm not surprised by the language and a lot of the communications there. I'm not surprised by, the aggression there that was reportedly in that hearing there either. Because again, there's a lot of money and a lot at stake, and NASCAR's handled things in one way for so long that, we don't usually get a peek behind the curtain. We don't usually see how everything operates. And, I don't blame things for getting a bit heated at that point. I think this is, I would assume that this has certainly gone further than it ever has in any similar case in the past year or two. So it's kind of unfamiliar territory at that point, but, we'll find out if it's, we'll find out if it's going to be. I don't know much more than you guys do on that. But yeah, that's going to definitely be another part to look at it. Let's see here. Kind of getting into some other notes here, as well. Been kind of a rough week in the motorsports community. We lost a few figures in the sport. There was just the news this morning about the passing of Bill Davis. It's very sad. Team owner that in the sport had just been around for a very long time, back to Jeff Gordon's early years in the Busch Series. Before that, Mark Martin driving for him as well. Of course, the team that won the Daytona 500 in 2002 with Ward Burton. Burton, one of probably the most prolific driver that team's ever had in that number 22 car for all those years. Dave Blaney and Scott Wimmer and others that have come up over the years. I always thought those paint schemes looked great. I mean, they always had like great looking cars. The Caterpillar paint scheme, the MBNA car, the Maxwell House car, and then when they expanded to multiple cars, and we've seen in 500 days, Dave Blaney have that great run in the 93 there as well. They've been a big part of the sport's history. Maybe not the biggest super team out there, but certainly some of the most recognizable cars that produced some incredible moments. And, on top of their move to Dodge in 2001, joining that effort and being a big part of it. He was a very big part of the sport and will certainly be remembered as such. And another one that we lost as well with Phil Barkdahl, a longtime single car driver, ran Daytona and Talladega for many years, an ageless competitor. There were so many wonderful comments that came out this week from people that knew him in his career. A driver that ran in the first parts of the restrictor plate era, driving his number 73 Oldsmobile out there, followed Richard Petty to the finish line in 1992. And raced well through the 90s. I mean, through really changing times in the sport. One of his rides sold to Felix Sabates, mentioned in the Kenny Irwin video there as well. Another driver that maybe not everybody talks about immediately, but absolutely had a tremendous effect on the sport. And then we had Steve Bird, the crew chief for Kenny Wallace in the Busch Series. Kenny, certainly condolences to him. They were very close on that. I know his family posted something about them, Kenny winning at New Hampshire. I believe it was that, up in his crew chief's neck of the woods there, and how meaningful that was, for many years. And then on top of that, Dan Runte, outside of NASCAR, the famous driver of Bigfoot in the monster truck circuit, big part of that. Again, there's a few monster truck drivers that always come to mind. I think of Gary Porter with Carolina Crusher and Dennis Anderson with Gravedigger. And Dan Runte was certainly part of that there too. So kind of a difficult week in that sense there too. But it's good to see, if there's any positive to be gleaned from that, is how many people that, have said so many nice things and what they've experienced from them. And you really know like how big of motorsports history all those individuals have had there as well. So certainly mentioning that here on the show too. On the same subject, a lot of you guys recommended, I think, I can't remember which one of you guys recommended this last week, but the documentary on Mel Kenyon and Rich Vogler, I did watch that this week, and that was absolutely fantastic. So thank you guys for the recommendation on that. Very, very eye-opening, especially on Vogler. It was kind of interesting. I mean, certainly both of them were tremendous personalities, but it was interesting to me, like how much it kind of shifted to focusing so much on Vogler's career, and perhaps, thankfully we can still have Kenyon with us here, but losing Vogler under those circumstances, and kind of, I couldn't help but, think with the Kenny Irwin video, kind of reminiscent of, having a challenger come up and how Vogler and Jeff Gordon had this rivalry, and, right to really the end of his own career there. And, and how that played in there. It was very well done. Very, very well done documentary. Very much enjoyed it. I was just kind of playing it, at lunch there, and I ended up just watching the whole thing. I'm like, man, this is really, really good. Great job by Flow Racing out there. I don't know if they've done other documentaries. I'm going to have to check out their channel more, but hopefully they do, because I think they did a fine job on that. Also, in terms of NASCAR history that came up this past week, there was very exciting news there from Bailey Excavating up in Michigan State. There was the reuniting of the old red car that J.D. McDuffie drove at Dover in June of 1991. Kenny Wallace, and he had a bit of an altercation there on the backstretch, and that car was destroyed in that wreck, and was in the process of being rebuilt when J.D. ran his last race at Watkins Glen. This red car, which was not the car that he ran at Watkins Glen, this car was still out of service at that August, but that car was getting rebuilt at the time, was finished off, and then was used as a decoration in a restaurant. The car was then rescued by the Bailey family, who themselves had picked up Old Blue from Ken Schrader, who Schrader got the hauler rather from the land sale, the auction there over at the McDuffie team in Sanford. And reunited the car with the hauler, and some great pictures this week. And it was really profound. I mentioned this on the feed there too, that it was great that they put Bailey Excavating logos on the quarter panels, because they were going to do that in August of 91. Right after Watkins Glen was the second Michigan race. Of course, a race more often remembered for Dale Jarrett's first win, that photo finish with Davey Allison. But that was also going to be the first time that JD ran Bailey Excavating as a sponsor in his car in several years. Right around that time, the Rumpel sponsorship kind of transitioned to the Suns Auto Supply deal, but they really needed some additional backing, and so they were going to work on the car at the Bailey shop. They were going to get that logo put on the car, and unfortunately, the rest, fate had other plans with how that played out. So I thought that was very tastefully done, tremendous effort there. I'd love to visit Michigan. We're going to have to do that race one of these days, if only to certainly visit out there. I know Kenny's done a tour through that shop there as well, and seeing them kind of putting the finishing touches on that 70 car there as well. But a wonderful bit of history there being recognized this past week. Speaking of other people being recognized within the sport, I want to a little bit of cleanup from last week. I failed to mention Deb Williams, and a congratulations to her on earning the Squire Hall Award from the NMPA. for her achievements in her career. If you don't know who Deb Williams is, you've definitely heard some of her research in my videos, because her articles come up constantly in doing my research, including the ones that I'm working on right now. In fact, the Greg Sachs video I'm working on for Rise of the Field Fillers, a big part of the opening of that video was from one single article that she did on interviewing Greg Sachs back in 1990, and gave some great insight into his early career out there. Definitely, what was it? I think it was Denzel Washington that came out recently and said, you always want to be, you don't want to pursue awards, but you want to be the person that gives the award some credibility and legitimacy. And Deb Williams is certainly one of those people that can certainly do that. And so very good to see there. And congratulations to her. On the same breath, we got an email earlier today that Rob Albright from PRN is going to be broadcasting his last race from the PRN studios. Well, not from the studios, from the racetrack for PRN next week at Bristol, ending a long career that he's been in the sport there as well. So congratulations to him as well, being a long-time radio announcer there from the corners there as well, doing a great job out there. But that'll be another story that I'm sure is going to get covered a lot more this next week. Was kind of an entertaining week here as well. Had a bit of a discussion there with Dave Moody on Twitter there about the playoff format, which was kind of interesting, talking about other storylines throughout the field there. Again, I mean, we just have different viewpoints there on the playoff system and what drivers and teams are talked about throughout the field there. And again, kind of similar to what we had with Mamba Smith's tweet from a while back. It's good to kind of see where people stand on this issue and maybe, have a more productive conversation about it there. I do think that there is still room to talk about other drivers that are not in the playoffs. And I don't think you have to be following last place to be able to do that. Just talking about these drivers today and having good runs out there, guys like John Hunter Nemechek, having good performances out there, even if they're not the ones that everybody's focusing on. We don't need the playoff system to write stories for us. Those stories are still happening, and you can choose to follow whichever ones out there you can. So it was an interesting and entertaining discussion there as well. I didn't count on that one kind of blowing up a bit as it did here this week. But again, I'm very pleased with, again, the response to these streams here, as well as to the lastcar.info website, people following what's happening at the back of the field and kind of enjoying and wanting to know more about what happens throughout these fields and what has happened in the past, which is very much a subject of these videos here as well. Maybe the most exciting racing isn't always at the front of the field. It can happen at the back. JD McDuffie was very big on mentioning that as well in his career there at the same time. Again, I think it was an interesting discussion, and I think that was another part of that there too. Let's see. Oh yeah, Rob was the voice of the ASA series in TNN. There you go, Michael. I didn't know that. My goodness. I always think of like Rick Benjamin and stuff with that series, but there you go. Other people that have been in the sport for a very long time. Let me get into the super chats here as well before I forget. We won't quite have enough time. I'm going to be wrapping up here in a little bit on this. I have a couple other notes here on this, but I think I'll table those for our Bristol show next week here as well. Beast of Metal, thank you for your super chat here for $5. Breaking NASCAR reportedly evaluating the fastest lap rule in the wake of the 21 taking the point at Darlington. Opinion NASCAR, please stop punishing the back of the pack. I agree. I appreciate you bringing this up here, Beast of Metal, because I completely agree on that. That's just nuts. I've never understood, and you expressed this as well in yours. I never understood what threat the back of the field has to the rest of the field in the sport. Why we've had these same restrictions about start and park teams and splitting hairs about if somebody parks or not, and how the charter system had to cut off the back of the field. And the same thing too. If you want the fastest lap, you're going to have to get the fastest lap. And, you could say that the guy that's wrecked a car has an advantage. Well, I mean, you should be able to beat a wrecked car for whatever is going on. So, if they got more tires, they could burn through them and, have a good run and not worry about having to manage a run to the end of it. Well, that's just the way it's going to play out. and you're not going to get the point bonus. Let's have something be interesting at the end of the field. And, it's 1 point also, like, what's the big threat in this here too? I think if it were in a full season championship, it would be really compelling. Just as it would be if a team comes back out of the garage area and gains a couple spots at the end of the race. I treat it exactly the same way. So I think that would be fantastic. Hopefully that's something that just goes by the wayside and we don't have to hear about that more. But I think it's a decent effort there too. Michael Jensen, my goodness, thank you for your super chat for $20 on here. Just joined in. Sad to hear about Phil Barkdahl and Bill Davis. Phil was always great making the field for Daytona and Dega. And for Bill Davis, what could have been if Jeff Gordon didn't leave in 1992. Very good point. 92 was a critical season in many respects, and Barkdahl and Davis were a big part of that. As you mentioned, what would have been? I think there was somebody that was posting a picture earlier. I don't know if it was you, Michael, or maybe it was somebody else, was posting a picture of if Jeff Gordon stayed at Bill Davis. They ran the 22 in the Cup Series with Ford and had like sponsorship from Target or something. And it's interesting to think about. The Hendrick deal just became too lucrative, too appealing for him to refuse, and working with Ray Evernham and, of course, the history that they put together. It doesn't get talked about as much, but Bill Davis's team, they really did a solid job with it. They got Bobby Labonte out there. And to compete against Gordon for Rookie of the Year in 93, they fell short of that, but they were doing better than, there were other rookie candidates that struggled that year. Kenny Wallace, for one, never has really anything nice to say about his time driving for Sabatas that year. But I don't think Bobby Labonte felt the same way when he drove for Bill Davis. I think that they had a good effort there. Stayed when they moved to Pontiac in 94 before Labonte had his own career resurgence over at Joe Gibbs Racing and winning his first races out there and his championship. And then, it becomes kind of, you had Randy LaJoie in there briefly, which I always thought was interesting. And then ultimately having, the effort change there with Ward Burton coming on board, winning at Rockingham. Again, as I said earlier, I always thought those cars looked fantastic. I always thought they had some of the best paint schemes out there. They had a wonderful refinement to them. The Caterpillar cars were absolutely iconic, even more so than the ones that Childress ran. I thought those were a great part of the sport there. And I don't want to talk up the aesthetics of it too much, because the person that Bill Davis and his wife Gail are much more than that. And I know they've been in the sport. I've never had the good fortune to meet them, but I know that many who have are sharing their memories. Ward Burton, certainly. Tommy Baldwin, sharing their thoughts there as well. Certainly good to see there at the same time. And Phil Barkdahl as well. Again, a lot of great interviews from drivers there in the past and other people that met him, other media members there as well. That X1R car, maybe that'll be a throwback scheme we'll see down the road. I'd like to see a throwback for either of these individuals here as well, represented in the field there. If you get a yellow and white car with red numbers on it for Phil, or maybe bring back the MBNA car or the Maxwell House car. We've seen luckily we've seen for Bill Davis. We had Jeb Burton run the Caterpillar scheme before, so we have had that. But maybe even more for maybe some lesser regarded ones. Who knows here at the same time. But yeah, difficult week in the sport there for the people we lost, and certainly good to see people talking much more about these competitors out there and what they've contributed in there as well. So there was that too. Just looking through this as well. So again, we're going to kind of wrap up here in a little bit. I think that's probably about all I have. I don't have. I guess we don't have any calls on inspection yet, so hopefully we might, if there's ever going to be a time where we do have an inspection call, it's probably going to be on this show when I cut it off early, and maybe something else happening at the back of the field there. But a rough, we'll see. A rough deal there for Josh Berry. I hate it for him. I know that they didn't have a top 5 finish since the win in Vegas. I know not everybody seemed to be expecting them to make it past this round. It's still disappointing to see, because it's the 75th anniversary of the Wood brothers. But nobody's going to take away that win that they had in Vegas. And I would caution people for being too harsh on Josh, because he's still a hell of a driver. We forget so easily his ascent through the ranks there in the late models, how Dale Jr. vouched for him and, was and really proved himself in that circuit. Those big wins driving in Michael Annette's place in the Xfinity Series out there. He'll land on his feet, and he might just be in a situation where, maybe, he can get that team to the next level from before. And indeed, from that win, I mean, again, perhaps he already has, and it's just, kind of going through a tough stretch, like we saw with Parker Retzlaff in the Xfinity Series, and that one turned around. So, again, it would be incredible. Again, the Wood brothers have won Bristol before. We know that from 500 days. Elliott Sadler pulling off that victory there from the 38th spot in a backup car in 2001. Who's to say it can't happen again next week? And maybe that's what we'll be talking about from there as well. So I'm going to take one more look at Pockrass's page here. I don't see any change in this. I don't see a call on inspection yet. So we'll table that for now. I got a couple other news stories. We'll table that and bring it into our show next week. So I think that will be it here. I think I got everybody's super chats. I want to make sure I don't leave anybody hanging on that. I think those are the ones that I got. But big thanks to both of you, Beast of Metal and Michael Jensen, for that. Yeah. Okay. So I caught up on those there at the same time. So, So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. That will about do it for our show tonight. Pending the results of post-race inspection, Josh Berry will be your feature for later tonight. So you can check out the website at lastcar.info. For more Twitter debates, you can check out my feed at lastcaronbrock on Twitter. And the website, of course, we have the YouTube videos here on this channel. New videos coming up very soon on Rise of the Field fillers. Some other profiles I'm working on. We're getting very close. I hope to have something out certainly this month. I have something, I'd love to get it out next week if I can. A bit of a shorter video here, but we'll get something going here. We'll have some more updates on that. You can get more updates in my Patreon at patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. Our next show is going to be next Saturday night. We'll do another show under the lights here to sum up the action in Bristol. We're going back to a triple header with the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series. I anticipate, unless I don't think I'm going to have an interview late that night, so we'll probably have a longer show there. We'll catch up on a couple more things here from this week and all the action in Thunder Valley. So definitely want to mention all that here as well. So again, apologies, it's a little bit of a shorter show here tonight, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be back again next week. So have a safe week, everyone, and we'll go back short track racing to Bristol. Fingers crossed we get a better race than we did in the spring. Things can only be so good. We'll find out what the case is going to be. Whatever it is, I'm sure I'll have plenty to talk about, and we'll get there too. And also, go Bills.